Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a beer. Wife's going to work through it, huh? Rick's here.
Yeah, apologies.
I tried to line Spencer to tell him to give you a serve.
Are you not accepting the apology? Or are you?
I was going to try and get him to give you a serve, but he said, I'm not going to do that. We're here now.
So we'll make, let's do this one.
The important stuff.
Well, yesterday's was good though.
It was good.
Though, eh?
Yeah.
Cool. Good to go anyway.
Oh, well, welcome everyone. We'll push on. Oh, sorry. Talk. Just a reminder that if you're going to talk, press the button on the machine. And welcome everyone. As you know, the meeting's recorded and it's streamed live. There's no, as I'm aware, set agenda, so I think we're passing over to you guys to lead us away.
Cool, kia ora everybody. So just following on from yesterday, we'd just like to take you through the, we're going to put the next slide up, Anna Hera?
Ryan's driving us today.
Yeah, so just following on from yesterday, we'd just like to take you guys through the monitoring, upgrade and technological review that we're currently doing. So I'll be giving a quick update on that, and then I'll hand over to Jane to do the introduction to the wastewater programme business case, and then Jane will pass back to myself to give an update on the proposed national standards for wastewater. Next slide please. Cool. So the monitoring, upgrade and technological review report. So this is to review TCC's performance and compliance with the wastewater consents for the preceding 5 years. So the report is required under condition 20 of the discharge consent. So yeah, as I say, the consent requires a 5-yearly review by an independent party, which should take into account the following sections: so any technological advances, progress towards zero waste, smart growth and sustainability factors, as well as looking at consent compliance, consent data review, as well as any changes in relevant legislation. Next slide please. So for the past 2 MUTA reports we've had separate cultural reports that have been submitted. So it was agreed with Wastewater Management Review Committee members that this MUTA report is going to take a slightly different approach. So there's going to be more of an integration between the technological side and the cultural aspects of the report. So to that end, Maria Consultant has been appointed to prepare the cultural aspects for inclusion into the MUTA report. The MUTA is due to be submitted to the Regional Council once the Wastewater Management Review Committee members have reviewed it. A draft of the MUTA will be presented at the June Wastewater Management Review Committee meeting, all being well. Next slide please. Alright, so just digging down a little bit further then. So we'll be looking at part of the MUTA report, we're looking at the performance review. So this is a review not against the consent conditions, but provides an overview of the plant's performance based on data collected through the operation of the network. So it can be data collected through the SCADA system, as well as any, as well as the various consents that we hold for the operation of the plants, going from 2019 to 2024. This section incorporates flow data such as the maximum daily discharge, which is shown on the right, as well as wet weather discharges. So this data we collect via the SCADA system rather than physical sampling. The quality indicators, so these are quite varied, but they include shellfish monitoring for Tuatua. So this is 5 stations either side of the wastewater outfall, as well as mushroom collections from the outfall structure. And again, there's data that we collect for monitoring data is all that we collect. Outfall inspections are also carried out by the contractors, which is also reviewed. Part of this as well, we had a large report called a benthic biota and sediments report, which was completed in 2024 by Boff Miskell, So a review of that is also provided in this section. Also a biannual community odour report as well. So that is the odour consents for both Chapel Street and Tauranga. So those are fairly large reports that are included in this review.
Just a question, the dates on that graph there, why are they so historical?
So,
So that's from the previous report, so which encompassed 2014 to 2018, 19.
So in June it would be...
yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a past report. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? I mean, feel free to ask if you do. Next slide, please. The following section of the Mutual report shall look at the compliance of the various consents we have for the operation of the wastewater system. So as we touched on yesterday, the wastewater network is authorised by many consents, which is shown in the image here. So we hold consents for the discharge of air, discharge of water, occupation of coastal space. I won't go into name in each specific one, there's quite a few there, as you can appreciate there's quite a few. So this section of the report's broken down by each of the consents that's shown on the right, and a summary is given for the compliance on each one. Next slide, please. For the technological review section, so this section provides a summary and an update of the processes and technologies, along with any new advances that's relevant to TCC's wastewater scheme. So there's been numerous technological advances since the past Mutual report. Biochar, so that's one of them. That's a solid product that's generated through a number of methods, one of which is pyrolysis. We end up with an end product which is what's called biochar, and it's used extensively in the fields of water purification, pollution management, soil composites and other industries. Resource recovery. One example of this is biomethane recovery. So this is essentially taking wastewater digested biogas and cleaning it to a 95% pure methane for export to the local, for sale or to the local gas network. So globally there's a increasing trend for wastewater utilities to implement this. In the energy and space efficiency, since the last Mutual report, the panel diffusers have evolved. These could present a number of efficiencies for Tauranga's wastewater treatment plants. In terms of end use alternatives, there's a few suggestions in the Mutual report for Chapel Street and Tauranga. For Tauranga specific, the bioreactor 4 and an additional associated clarifier are placeholder assets in the 30-year wastewater strategy. This is to single further capacity will be required. The Mutual report explores some interesting alternatives to this. Excuse me. Another change for consideration is the use of lift-out diffuser grids to allow easy access for diffuser replacement when the bioreactor is online. For Chapel Street, as we mentioned yesterday, it was quite restrained by the digester capacity. Also that we've got restricted space, so if space allows, there's some possibilities that the Mutual suggests. One thing I'd like to note is that there's a new section in the Mutual report which is new, which is called sustainability factors. So this is due to an increased focus on sustainability, due to the impact of sustainability on the planning and the operation of infrastructure. This isn't specifically required by the consent, but it's considered appropriate to be included. So the following topics are climate change mitigation, resilience to natural hazards, and Tauranga OTY. So that's its own section in the Mutual. Moving on to the legislation and policy change. So this section outlines any legislative changes and policy applicable to the operation of the wastewater network. So to name a few, we've got the NPS-FM. So this was introduced in 2011, has undergone quite a few iterations in the last 13 years, with the most recent one being in October 2024. The National Environmental Standards for Fresh Water as well, so that sets out certain requirements for activities that pose... Oh, sorry, next slide. Oh, sorry, so yeah, we're just on to the NPS-FM. That's where I was. So yeah, the National Environmental Standards for Freshwater set requirements for certain activities that pose a risk to freshwater and freshwater ecosystems. The Marine Area and Coastal Act, so that replaced the Foreshore and Seabed Act in 2011. So this act protects customary rights in marine and coastal areas. Sorry. We've got the wastewater performance standards, so we're going to touch on that a little bit later. In terms of the regional planning instruments, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council Regional Coastal Plan, so this became operative in 2019. There have been 2 amendments to the Act made in 2021. The main one being Schedule 10, which is a water quality classification. As this is related to the receiving environments by the wastewater network, so the Muta report explores the implications of Schedule 10 in relation to the wastewater network. So just to summarise, there's quite a bit there in the legislation, and this is just a very brief overview. Yeah, the Muta also looks into climate change response, local water done well, and the good practice guidelines from Water New Zealand. Next slide, please. Moving on to the conclusion and recommendations section. So this follows the condition 20 of the consent, which sets out specific matters that need to be addressed in the report. So as we mentioned earlier, the Muta reviews TCC's performance and compliance from 2019 to 2024. This section of the Muta breaks down the conclusion and the recommendations of the review to specific sections. So just to give you a bit of an update, to date this shows that there's some efficiencies around the monitoring programs that we have for the consents. They mainly focus on the ecological surveys as well as some of the sampling that we do. And as we touched on a little bit earlier, there's some efficiencies highlighted for both treatment plants. Next section, please. Next slide, sorry. Okay, for the cultural recommendations, so as we touched on earlier, the cultural recommendations will be combined into the Muta into one document as opposed to separate documents. This slide shows some of the recommendations that we've had from the past Muta. I don't know if you want to add anything, Spencer, on current progress?
Perhaps just to explain the reason for the integration. Having reviewed the last Muta report and the cultural review, it struck me that there's no exclusivity in the dichotomy between what is technological and what is cultural. I mean, if you read that report, it's as much technical as the Muta to an extent. So it didn't seem to me to be useful to have this kind of separation, and then some of the matters that were raised in the cultural review were relevant to some of the issues that were dealt with in the Muta report. So that's why we came up with this idea, well, why don't you just do one report, look at it all together, and then come up with recommendations based on all of the work that you're doing across all of those issues. So that was the kind of thinking behind it. I mean, we'll see what the outcome is to see whether or not it's been successful or otherwise. But
so the consent didn't require anything specific in terms of separate, joint.
I'll have to ask someone else on that. That's probably just slightly beyond my expertise at the minute.
No, it doesn't. Essentially, it says that the option's there for a cultural report if the Tauranga members of the committee want one. So yeah, it's pretty open as to what we can do.
Thanks, Randy.
Cool, thanks, Spencer.
Sounds like a great idea to me. I was wondering who the consultant was. Do we know who the
Yes, that was Becca. Becca was appointed.
cultural?
Oh, sorry,
Consultant.
Maria consultant.
Right. Do you know? Have you got a background? Do you know? Does anyone know them?
Kia ora, Rod. Yes, the consultancy is led by Te Rangi Maria Williams. She is very experienced in this kind of work and has done a number of cultural reports and assessments in relation to TCC activities at Tauranga. So she's got a high level of knowledge and understanding around the council's activities as well as the cultural dimension. We're in good hands.
Sounds great. Just wondering whether we could get their opinion on the integration as part of the report. Maybe it'd be quite interesting just to understand that.
Good idea.
As into the whole plan? As into the whole plan, or you talking about integration?
She's doing it now.
Into the report, yeah.
Yeah, coming on with doing it. Thanks, Spencer. Thanks for that. I don't have anything further to add. I think we'll move on to the next slide if there's no more questions.
Okay, I think I've met everybody, but I'm Jane Groves. I work in the drainage operations team with Radley and Jim and Wally. So I just want to give you a bit of an overview of the wastewater program business case. Just a bit of a snapshot. Happy to take questions as we go through though. So I guess the wastewater program business case came about when we were looking more closely at the condition and capacity constraints of the marine outfall, and I think Radley touched on that yesterday. So we spoke yesterday and we showed a diagram which showed sort of the magnitude of the flows coming into Tauranga and what we could pump out the outfall. So yeah, we wanted to look at sort of what options were available to us to sort of address those constraints and what the best way to do that might be. It quickly became pretty apparent that we couldn't look at the outfall and the outfall system, which includes the ponds, in isolation from what else is happening in the network and throughout the city. So we needed to, sort of look more broadly, what are we doing in the network, where is the growth occurring in the city, and, where is that and how quickly is that happening. So what we decided to do then was we looked at this Treasury better business case framework, and it seemed like a really good vehicle for us to take that sort of more broad, holistic look at wastewater and really integrate sort of the planning that we were doing in the network with the planning work required for the treatment plants and also for the outfall. So that was really the vehicle that we chose to use. And this kicked off, I would say three years ago. So it's been quite a longevity, and some aspects have gone quite slowly, but I still think it's been really valuable and will give us really good information going forward. What essentially we are doing is we're looking at how future population growth can be serviced both within TCC and within Western Bay, where it makes sense to look at that as well. We're looking at we're looking closely at a 50-year planning horizon, but we're also looking at population and climate change, etc., sort of up to about 2118, so it's sort of like a 100-year horizon. It considers alternative methods of wastewater treatment, different treatment technologies, options for reuse, etc., and also whether, whether the existing two plants can service us, or whether we need to look at potentially different treatment plants and where they might be generally located in the area. I'm not sure whether how familiar you are with sort of this Treasury Better business case framework, but we have an external facilitator, a practitioner who has led our project team through the process, and we are sort of only partway through it. We're halfway through it, I guess you'd say. So the initial phases really are looking at what are the key issues that we as a project see in the wastewater space for the city. What are the investment objectives we want, that need to be met? What does any investment need to achieve? And also a range of key service requirements, which I'll go into shortly, as to the scope and the breadth that we want to consider within the business case. Yes, they're grouped into 4 main themes: growth and development, tangata whenua partnership and cultural values, environmental key service requirements, and also we're looking at sort of future resilience and how adaptable any investment will be going forward. The outcome will be a preferred way forward for wastewater, essentially at that sub-regional level, where it makes sense to pick up Western Bay as well. And so we see it being very valuable as it's setting the scene for us if we transition across to a CCO and if we have partner councils in that CCO arrangement, such as Western Bay. We see it also as a key mechanism to address the tangata whenua concerns regarding the wastewater scheme. So those have been touched on. Spencer spoke about those yesterday at Tauranga and more broadly with wastewater in general. So there's been quite a bit of work on developing cultural values and how they are reflected in the program business case. Next slide, please. Yeah, I guess just to add there that one of the 4 investment objectives that we were looking at was a strong and enduring partnership between tangata whenua and council that achieves a shared vision for wastewater. So the project team was staff, so Radley, myself, Wally, we have Te Rangi Marie Williams for Ngā Pauriki, we have Whitty over there, we have Des on the project team, and some consultants at planning and wastewater technical expertise as well. So over the past 3 years we have met and worked with the practitioner to progress through the various stages of the process. It's been highly collaborative and we have had some long sessions in those workshops at times. We have a terms of reference that sets out how we work together and what the reporting arrangements are, which are essentially back to the Wastewater Management Review Committee. And so that is all set out in the terms of reference there. And so I guess the point that we are now, we have had a range of outputs that have been endorsed by the committee, and that was done in March last year. So they include what our problem statements were, our benefit statements, the investment objectives, the scope of what the PBC covers, and the range of key service requirements, which I'll show you shortly. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but feel free to sing out. Basically,
Jane?
Yep.
Some of the tangata whenua members asked for an equity of service to compared to servicing general land and Māori land. A couple of good examples, that we've been using, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll put that in the mix, and because you can't even think to build on somewhere if you can't get water there. And you heard yesterday some of the, and some of the corridors, so that's what we've been pushing in there pretty hard too,
That one's number 7, I think. Yeah. I did pull that one out actually. So how that is reflected in the PBC, achieving consistency between provision for Māori and non-Māori land connectivity. So you'll see there's a wide range of aspects that we are considering through the PBC, and they are focused on those 4 different key areas. Growth and development, tangata whenua, partnership and values, the environmental impacts that might be associated with the wastewater scheme, resilience and adaptability. So I guess for each of these we've identified what the PBC requires us to do is look at different scope levels. So there's a minimum, there's an intermediate level, and there's a maximum level. And so there are different levels of change that you can assign. A little bit confusing, but so the minimum is the critical. What must we achieve? What must we do? And then the intermediate scope levels are, right, what's desirable, what would be nice to have, and of course the maximum's the aspirational. If we really stretched ourselves, how far can we get, you know? And so for each of these, what the program business case does is we identify options or responses. What could we do? And that could be an infrastructure solution or a policy setting or anything really. What could that response be that could target each of those at each of those scope levels? So, for example, could it be enables? I don't know. We could look at enables treated wastewater reuse. You know, it might be that we gives a rate rebate or something like that. So, there's a wide spectrum of things that we are looking at to achieve each of these KSRs. And that's the point that we're up to now. We've identified a long list of responses to address each and every one of these, and we've done that as a project team.
Just a quick question. You've got a note down the bottom there. What does that mean?
That is something our lady has put through that's taking us through it. I'm not exactly sure.
So it'll be because we had more than 25 at some point, and what we've done is we've condensed some of them down.
That's
so
it, yeah.
There's a certain number of KSRs through the Better Business Program process that they like to have. And if you have too many, it sort of becomes adversarial sometimes, so they try to condense them down as much as they can.
So there's nothing important that's been dropped as part of your question?
No, it just means that they've been consolidated into one of those KSRs.
3 of them, number 4, number 8 and number 14 have been consolidated into some of these others.
And very much it's about traceability of process, so transparency. So that will just acknowledge the fact that there used to be one there. So if you looked at the slide from 3 months ago, there might have been one there. But subsequently the team has agreed, no, that's not needed, or we'll consolidate it.
So
Yeah.
duplicating.
Yeah. Next slide, please. This slide's a little bit of a repeat, but so yeah, it is wastewater only. We are looking at the wastewater scheme, but obviously when you're looking at responses, say to reduce discharges to the app or reduce wastewater production, you might also think about what can we do in terms of water consumption to reduce that. So there is a bit of cross-pollination there. I spoke about the 3 levels of scope and how we're targeting sort of different responses to the 3 levels. What must we do? What would we like to do? What would be a good thing to do? And what would really stretch us and be aspirational? In the geographical scope, again, we have 3 scope levels for the geographical area and also the population growth, the population. So I haven't included those slides here, but, you know, we have, I don't know, we're looking at, I have got the slide here, I perhaps should have included it, but, you know, it basically steps out. If we stretch ourselves, could we look at going further out and maybe picking up Minden, for example, or are we constrained, are we keeping it at a minimum and looking at what we've got in our LTP, for example, what we're planning to do? What do Western Bay need in terms of their Te Puke plant? How secure is that, and should we be looking to pick that up? So that would be in the higher scope levels.
Yeah, for example, Tutu is closer to to
Yes.
the plant than it is to the Tauranga plant.
Yes.
As an example, yeah.
As an example. Yeah. Next slide, please.
Many satellite city to 10,000 people, well, we have our own wastewater plant. You know, could make it 5,000. I don't know, you know.
So I've just put a little graphic here to the right which shows the assessment process of how how the PBC process works. So I've spoken about the key service requirements which we've identified, and we've set the scope levels for each of those. We've worked out what, discussed as a team and identified what possible responses there are to address each of those KSRs. So, you know, what could we do in terms of infrastructure, what could we do in terms of other policy incentives and stuff to address all of those. And that's where we're up to, and I'll put an arrow there, we're here. What would happen next in the PBC process is that all of those, everything gets assessed, what we call long list assessment criteria, and as part of the process and through the team, we've identified those investment objectives, like I said before, and also a range of critical success factors. And what the critical success factors are is they are must-haves. That the solution has got to be consentable, for example. It's got to be, we've got to have the ability to deliver it, for example. How does it align with the policies and plans? So I guess it's a screening to say, you know, how do these responses align with the investment objectives and also these must-dos that we've identified. And then we would come out with the shortlist program of options to say, right, this is what we think are the best mix of responses and the way that we should be moving forward in terms of investment. As I said, we're here. We've done the response identification. What we needed to do, and this is what we're doing now, so there has been a bit of a delay for the project team members, is we have been doing a lot of modelling in the background, and that modelling really is to do some further work on the scope, of the geographic scope and the growth servicing. So I might have alluded to this yesterday, we're looking at the future population up to 2100, and we're looking at where we think that growth might occur. We're looking at how would that look if we just utilised our existing 2 plants, and what would that mean for a new outfall, and what would that mean for the ponds? Can we look at maybe reducing our reliance on those ponds, and if we did that, what would it mean for the outfall? Or do we think actually that we might need 1 or more additional treatment plants, and where generally would they be? So we've got wastewater modellers on board at the moment, and they're doing all of that number crunching for us. It's quite difficult trying to rationalise the number of scenarios. As you can imagine, we could have a number of scenarios. So we're going through that process now to identify, what are the logical, realistic, possible pathways we could travel. Are there infrastructure constraints that would mean that really wouldn't be a viable or plausible option if we chose that? And it's signalling those as well. And that's about where we're up to, and that's the outputs of that is what we would bring back to you probably in our next session.
Sorry, just a quick question on the modelling.
Yeah.
So we've got an option on the table for multi-council, so more than us and Western Bay, for example. Is the model easily adapted to bring in somewhere we don't even know about yet? Like it could be somewhere,
Oh.
I don't know, down south, who knows?
He's just asking about the geographic scope. At the moment, the PBC is looking at Western Bay, but could this be expanded to look at other geographic areas, for example, if we partnered with additional councils?
Yeah.
Could, yeah.
So
We're not currently.
So the framework's there, it's just doing the document.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I said, we're still working in the modelling, focusing hard to try and sort of consolidate what these scenarios are and make them realistic. We don't want to put forward and do further work on any options that just don't make sense and that you'd never do. We'll then compile these into program options. So this is what this looks like, this is what this looks like. Looking at all of the other responses for the KSRs. So it'll be a package of things that we'll come back with, different packages. We'll bring that back. And then I think it would be valuable talking to the committee about, right, there's a whole lot of things whirring around us at the moment in terms of the new wastewater standards, in terms of moving to the CCO. Do we continue with the PVC process and go through the assessment, or do we pause, or whatever? You want to add anything else?
Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, I think you should, and I suppose there is, make room for 2 to 4 elected members to participate in these workshops that we're having, because we're the elected members, you know, and because one of the things I was worried about was that as well, you know, it didn't have anything about the actual ratepayers benefiting. Because otherwise, you know, like we can get another view. Might take, I don't know, if you've got your head around it all, with the water stuff and everything else. So, but
Yep.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There's so much going on in our area at the moment. CCOs, you know, some organisational changes, new regulation, new legislation. We're going to have 3 regulators, Tomara Arawai, the DIA, the Commerce Commission, and of course the Regional Council. There's a lot going on at the moment. So what we'd like to do is finish the modelling, come back to you and say, here's what a program of options could look like, and kind of pause it there, and so that everyone comes up to speed with those options and what they mean and what the cost might be and where they might sit in the LTP, if they sit there at all. So there's quite a lot of big decisions, if you like, that this committee is going to have to come to grips with in the next few months to determine whether or not that's taken through to full council and incorporated into the LTP anywhere. So these next few stages are quite important. So we just want to kind of slow it down, well, finish this piece of work, and then we can come to you with some decent information to sort of say, where would we like to go next?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're sitting, in a nutshell.
Well, can I just ask, in terms of this pause, just kind of that pausing for a moment, or is it pausing for what sort of time frame? And does it require the legislation, the regulations, or other decisions to be made before you can then revive it, or can you just give me some more information on that?
I've got no preconceptions around that. That's
Okay.
a committee decision. You guys will decide how long you want to pause it for, or if you just tell us to crack on. So we'll be guided by you on that. We have to put forward a water services delivery plan, and that has to go to the DIA in September. And at the moment, well, our consultation documents are going out very shortly. Our local water done well. Western Bay have got theirs out. Ours will be going out soon, and they're both showing a preferred option of us going together. So if that's the guidance that we get from council, we will then put together a water services delivery plan between now and September, showing how a joint CCO will function and deliver those services in a financially sustainable and affordable way to our community. So there's all of that going on in the background as well, and that's going to be a huge piece of work for us. So you can pause a little bit, or you can pause for a long bit, and really will be guided by you on that, just around how comfortable you are with where we're at and when we're ready to go with the next set of decisions. So I'm not sort of saying let's completely stop or anything at all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Is that
So that really was me, but if you've got any questions on it, by all means.
okay? Anything further?
Yes, so just on that, there's a whole heap of information that this really is just a snapshot. We've had numerous reports and stuff to the committee that we're happy to provide. So if you want to dive into any of the detail.
Can I just can we get into Stella? For us, I think, for the new guys.
We'll discuss with Heather, I'm not sure if that's available.
Not promising to read it in the first week, but it's in there.
Second week.
Am I doing wastewater standards?
It's just a 5-minute snapshot just on the standards.
Do you want to put that next slide up, please? All right. So, So since we were the last committee meeting that we had, we've obviously had these draft standards sort of dropped from the Te Mata Arawai, and they've been looking. Their sort of aim, as it says there, was to provide councils with some certainty, enable planning and delivery of the essential upgrades that the communities of New Zealand require. So their focus has been on a significant portion of New Zealand's wastewater infrastructure consents are up for renewal in the next decade, or are currently expired, and so a lot of them are also not meeting those compliance requirements, and so this was I guess an attempt to try and give councils and communities some certainty around raising that standard, providing maybe a smoother way of getting consents, and a more certain requirements around the sort of standards that will be required, making it hopefully a little bit more cost effective, but still protecting public health and the environment. So we've got until, it's quite a tight turnaround for submissions, but we've got until the end of April to review the draft documentation that they've put out, and we'll definitely be submitting on that. Our consents don't expire until 2040, so none of the standards will essentially apply to Tauranga until we're looking to reconsent. Next slide, please.
So I'm just on that.
Yep.
Submission. Does it have to go through council to?
It doesn't. It's really a technical. It's more technically minded around the sort of standards that they're trying to, around quality and those kinds of things. So it doesn't have to come through council, but if council do want,
some have come through council. It was just.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you guys know way more than we will.
Next slide, please.
But you can get us a copy of the submission.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, for
Can
sure.
I ask, well, before we go off
Yep.
that topic though, is how do the standards compare to what is where you're already doing?
Yeah, sure.
Are they higher, same, mid, or lower?
So, if I just go through what the standards that they're proposing first, and then we'll talk about how that works with us. So they've got standards. Essentially, what they're looking at is like a bookshelf of different things, and depending on what your current plants might be, or the treatment level that you're doing, you take a different book off the shelf, sort of thing. So, for example, if you've got a discharge to open ocean, that's a particular standard. If it's to fresh water, it's another one. If it's to land, another one. And so that particular table that I've got up there is around discharge to water, and you've got to lakes and wetlands, rivers and streams, estuaries, and then you start going into the coastal environment and open ocean. And depending on the receiving environment, they've got different standards there. But as I say, they've also got ones to land. They've also, which is a real progressive step, are using a new set of biosolids guidelines that have been put together over the last couple of years and have just been released. So they're looking to onboard those into the standards around different grades of biosolids and what they can be used for, whether that be land application or other reuses. And it's also looking at how councils notify, report, manage overflows and those consented overflows or bypasses. So at the moment there's a wide variety of how councils report and notify on them. I think I mentioned yesterday we've got a regional group that was set up, and all the TAs in the region have collaborated on a set of guidelines and a sort of standard on how we'll do that. That's not the case in a lot of other areas. So so it's around trying to standardise that as well and enable that, I guess, raising that awareness around these things and when they happen to the communities involved. So how does that compare to what we've currently got? So I think the TV's actually in the way, but if you can see right on the far end on the TV, you've got BOD, you've got suspendeds, nitrogen, phosphorus, ammonia. A lot of them are not applicable. They don't have a limit on. They have at the bottom there entrecocci, which is about 40,000 CFU. So they're quite, when you compare them to what we're currently meeting and within our consents, they're actually our current consents a lot harder to meet, and we're meeting that. So I think what you'll find is this is a first tranche. This is something that they sort of want to get out, and from what I've been told when they come and talk to us, their focus really is on, essentially they say 50% of New Zealand's wastewater plants cater for 1,000 people or less. So I think what they're looking at and what they're focusing on at the moment are those smaller plants, getting them up to a standard that means they're protecting public health, they're compliant with their consents, and that they're costing the cost of them is like of a value that councils and communities can sort of rely and say, right, if we do this, we're going to end up with this outcome where we've got a wastewater plant that's working properly, meeting its consents, and is looking after those two things of public health and the environment. So I think what you'll find is over the next few years these will change and these will adapt and will probably tighten a little bit, but this is like their first go, if you like. That's pretty much all I had. As I say, it was really just a brief overview of what's out there, and what we're going to be trying to submit on.
There is a consultation document.
Oh yes, so yeah, we can add this to Stella or provide it as well. It's a consultation document that they've put out with a few questions for councils or what they want us to sort of submit on, I guess.
Just a question. So the example we've got up here, discharge to water standard, and the current TCC consents, which is still 20 years old, are you saying they have higher standards than what is currently proposed at a national level?
Yeah,
so for discharge to water for the ocean, most of those are not applicable. So does that mean there is a TSS or a BOD standard in the current consent?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
So, as an example, our current entrecocci limit is 1,500 compared to the 40,000 that's in there. One of the questions that we have is how. So if they put a standard in the standard, if you like, whether it might be nitrogen, for example. they've put that in the standard, but the current consent contains a lot of things that are not in the standard. For example, like heavy metals. At the moment, they're saying, well, that's still going to go through the normal RMA process. The regional councils will come to a decision around that and what that might look like. But one of the questions we have is how that will work in terms of if you're trying to set up a process where if you pick this type of treatment to meet this kind of standard, you're going to have not a fixed cost, but you're going to be sort of fairly certain on the time frame and the cost that might incur for your community. But then you have other limits for different things that the regional council might impose. How do those two things work together? In terms of you might have to have a different type of treatment to meet a regional council limit for a different contaminant, for example. So
It's almost like going against this, having a standard.
well, yeah, it just needs to be clarified how that works.
It can't be two or three different standards or something. They've got to get together and agree on something. The man like the government should step in and go, going to be this.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we'll, just as an example of something that we'll submit and we'll say, well, how actually will this work? Yeah, we'll obviously supply a copy of what we submit and take any questions on that as well.
Great. Is it? We're all done. Done and
Pretty
dusted.
much us. Yeah. So today was really just to give you a quick overview of some of the important sort of reports, and that will be coming over the next couple of committee meetings, and rather than just dropping it on you the next one. So yeah.
Does anyone have anything they want to raise, or are there any questions or any requirements of staff or anything? No?
Yeah, probably just one. This chart that you'll be giving feedback on as far as the consultation, who actually put it together?
Yes, so it's done through the Water Services Authority, so Te Mata Arawai. Yeah, they've produced this along. They've used 2 or 3 consultants as well as their expert staff on wastewater to come up with these standards.
So they haven't gone through the various regional councils in the country to come up and use their guidelines to set the guidelines? It would appear not.
The consultation document says that they have spoken to regional councils and territorial authorities, and they've used about half a dozen particular plants around the country as sort of test examples of how it might work. Unfortunately, we weren't one of them, so. But yeah. So.
Because it might have looked a lot different had they consulted with us.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
But I guess they may argue that they've used experts in the field that have worked with a number of councils across this country. The likes of Becker and GHD. Trying to think who the other one was they used, but so I think that they would say that they've there's a lot of expertise they've used to produce this document, and so it's really trying to refine how they've got good bones there, and then how it might work for individual councils is something they probably hope to get through the submission process. As I say, they have used half a dozen, so some large city plants all the way down to small rural plants as sort of test case examples that they've put through this standard.
Oh. Yeah. Thanks. I guess it's important to remember why these were put together, and it's around 23% of wastewater treatment plants in the country are either unconsented or working on expired consents. Half the treatment plants in the country are, as Radley said, service less than 1,000 people. So how can you give those small communities clarity and certainty around what they're going to invest in? So let's say you live in a village somewhere with 400 or 500 people, and you're discharging into quite a big river with lots of flow. You go to that piece there, and it'll show you here's 2 or 3 treatment type examples that you can plug in, and it will deliver the quality standards that are needed without having adverse effects on that receiving environment. So it really gives a lot of clarity, and also that if you can show that the treatment plant that you are building will meet those water quality standards, the regional council cannot decline your consent. They can impose additional things above that, but they can't deal with the water quality aspects. They can only deal with other contaminants like heavy metals or PFAS or something like that. So it really does not short circuit the consenting process, but it gives the consent applicant, the councils, or in future perhaps CCOs, clarity around how they can get to a point where they're going to get a consent and get it delivered to the community a lot more quickly. So the objective is to clean things up. Us big guys, if you like, us, the Hamiltons, the Christchurch, Wellingtons, Aucklands, we will still have the big municipal plants that really exceed these parameters by quite a lot. And there's no intention on our part, I can assure you, to dumb things down, if you like.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, they're focusing on that particular part of the country, that will benefit from this initial stage. And I think as things evolve, the likes of us and Auckland will feed more into that. We're also probably the ones with a decent time frame in terms of consents. I don't think Auckland's consents run out anytime soon either. So, they've probably got that in the back of their minds as well.
Just a general question, is there much of a difference financially in terms of ramifications of building infrastructure and assets with such a wide discrepancy of criteria, and even for us going forward?
Not so much for us, because we're doing it in a modular fashion, so we've already settled on a process, a quality parameter that we're discharging to, and we're going to continue to meet that or exceed it, or do better than that. But it all depends on what the receiving environment is, so that's why the standards for discharge to land and different types of waters that receive the effluent. So if you're going to an open ocean a couple of kilometres offshore or whatever, then it doesn't have to be treated to quite the same standard as if you're discharging into, for example, the Manawatu River, which is small, shallow. It's got a solid base, lots of rock, it's stony, so periphytons and everything grows on it, lots of algae and things, so you've got to have a very high quality effluent to discharge into that environment. So it's looking, it's a pick list, if you like. Yeah.
Great. Nothing further. Oh, thank you to the staff for finishing us early today, so we can get in before the traffic. Would anyone like to close us with a karakia? Or we'd open it out, see if anyone was keen.
I've got one, I'll do one.
Ka pai?
Yep. I was instructed earlier to do it anyway. I got prepared. Okay, so thank you very much to staff today. Karakia, whakamutanga, kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakatahi ai, kia tūruki whakatahi ai, haumi e hui e.
Tāki. Awesome. Alright.
Thank you guys, that's good.
We'd like to go and share some of our council.
Hey, yeah.
Don't give me any ideas.
Because Wally wasn't presenting.